Yesterday evening we had a lovely session. True Self, Atman session, according to the third turning of the Wheel of Dharma teachings, Buddha nature teachings. So, in Amrita Mandala we practice according to the maybe like second and third turnings of the Dharma, which means that there is the doctrine of emptiness and the doctrine of Buddha nature, doctrine of Shunyata and doctrine of Tathagata Garbha. The first turning of the Wheel of Dharma are Hinayana teachings. So that's why Hinayana, which means literally small vehicle, sometimes it's translated as classical vehicle, it's included in the second turning. So that's why in the context of Mahayana Dharma this first turning is not always mentioned. But what it means technically, this first turning teachings where the ultimate attainment is arhathood. Oh gosh, I can't remember what arhat means. Maybe something like noble or something like that. Can't remember. But anyway, this arhat state is different from the state of a Buddha. Somebody who is Sambuddha, has attained Sambodhi. Sambodhi is a short from Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. So like a supremely awakened Buddha, Sambodhi. So Arhat, what it means, if we look at Arhat state from technical perspective of subtle bodies and bhumis, it means that it works with the first 6 bhumis. So the causal body inside the physical body, and also the astral body, the meridian system, which is also inside the body. So somebody who's fully attained Arhat, and I know that there's at least one such person alive, probably more, but I'm not that familiar with the Theravada Hinayana world. But so 6 bhumis perfected, and the astral body meridian system perfected, which is a really solid attainment. But in Mahayana there are these, the reason why Mahayana speaks of shunyata, emptiness, and not selflessness, which is anatman, is because emptiness has more range. It is the same nature of mind, selfless, empty of self, but there is more range to it, more scale with Mahayana. So it's not only 1 through 6 bhumis, but there are the samsaric grounds, samsaric bhumis of 1 through 10 in Mahayana. And this is what we can read. By the way, this definition of arhats, 1 through 6 bhumis, it's not only my definition. My definition comes from analyzing arhats, measuring, doing bhumi analysis on arhats. But there are also Kagyu lamas, historical Kagyu lamas, Mahamudra lamas, who have said exactly the same thing, that arhats work with the terrain from 1st through 6th bhumis. And also in Mahayana literature there is this Dasha bhumi, 10 bhumis, widely written in different scriptures, including Avatamsaka Sutra. Can't remember what the chapter is, maybe 23, 24, something like that. very long chapters. But there are many other texts of 10 bhumis. So 10 karmic grounds, 10 karmic fields, 10 karmic areas in our minds that store karmic imprints, habits and patterns of selfishness and self-delusion. So, what this emptiness or wisdom, pragya, Dharma, this teaching is it's not a denial of existence. It is not a denial of existence. What it talks about is it defines a problem in a very practical way. Defines the problem of existence. And we have an existential problem when or if we believe in this self-entity, me or I. So that sense of me-ness, I-ness, entityness, that we believe that there is such an entity somewhere in our bodies, in our heart, in our head, in our body, that there is like an entity like I, me, that is separate from other entities, you, others. So what this wisdom teaching, emptiness teaching, what it teaches is to pay attention to that notion of self, notion of entityness, and look at it and see through it. The seeing through is vipassana. Buddhism is vipassana meditation, means direct seeing or supreme seeing, which means that through looking at this sense of I, me, self, this entity, we at some point see through it. We see that this self-entity is, we have kind of taken it for granted that this self-entity exists. But when we start looking at it and see through it, we see that it's like a false belief, false understanding, like a mistaken belief. And we cannot actually find such a lasting, solid self, me or I. We cannot find it. What we find is a heap, like an accumulated heap of various thoughts, memories, impressions, emotions, and then this heap is that creates this self-delusion, this ignorance, this avidya. So, but when we start looking at it, what happens is that little by little, this heap starts, this knot starts loosening, and then we see that, oh, there is not actually like a solid entity there that always stays there, but it's rather a heap of things. And when this loosening starts happening, now we are talking about bhumi openings, awakening experiences and bhumi perfections, that when this loosening starts happening, we start seeing through that bundle of self-delusion, and then awakening start happening because, we see that there's actually nothing there, that there is no self-entity there. And rather, we see the nature of mind which is characterized by selfless clarity, love and kindness, and groundedness. So when in the place of the stubborn causes of delusion, we see this nature of mind, selfless, clear, soft, radiant, fresh, grounded, stable, that's awakening. That's an awakening experience. That's a bhumi opening, bhumi perfection. That's a bhumi event. And that means that when we have such awakening experiences, there will be changes in the subtler of the two subtle bodies called causal body. So when we, in Buddhism, there is a term called Dharma kaya, which literally means body of phenomena. So this emptiness, stages of emptiness meditation, stages of the realization of wisdom happens in the causal body. But we need to understand this correctly, that this causal body, gradual purification of the causal body through these bhumis, through these awakening experiences, it affects our whole being, it affects our whole mind. So we are talking about the nature of phenomena, nature of all phenomena. And often when different teachers, when they teach emptiness meditation, they use some examples of a table or a chair or a snake and a rope. Not very useful, because we don't really realize emptiness by contemplating the nature of a chair or a table. We need to understand that emptiness meditation is about this sense of self, this mental, emotional, you could say even psychological mind, where this sense of self is located. So it's internal work, internal process. In Amrita Mandala we have a very, very useful instruction. You know, some people, like I said yesterday, that about half of the Sangha are people who come to our method without previous Dharma practice anywhere, without previous familiarization, and about half comes from having practiced usually 20 years or more. So it is usually the case that people with prior training, when they come to Amrita Mandala, they already have number of bhumis open. And having said that, I immediately remembered that there are also people who have practiced for 20, sometimes 30 years, who have not had a single awakening experience. So that also happens. But my point is that when it comes to the two-part formula, which in our method is used just for opening the first bhumi, just for generating the first awakening experience, in the two-part formula there are two modes. One is selfless state of mind, or you could say selfless nature of mind, and the second one is self-based mind, self-based. So selfless and self-based. And we use these two modes throughout our practice. When we are working through the path of wisdom and clarity, and when we are working through the path of healing and light. So there are these two modes, selfless and self-based, selfless and clear and selfish, like selfish or traumatized in the context of the path of healing and light, but it's still the same in our practice. What makes practice very efficient is when you understand these two states of mind. In Dharma we speak of samsara and nirvana a lot. Samsara meaning self-centered, self-deluded state of mind, and nirvana means absence of self. So nirvana means the state of mind where only positive qualities, none of the deluded ones, none of the impure, none of the negative, but only positive qualities spontaneously radiate. So we, in Amrita Mandala practice, we keep comparing the two. And I've said this countless times over the years that when we get stuck with self-delusion, sometimes it feels like, bloody hell, you might have a strong dark night or some afternoon on Tuesday when this sense of self just gives you a splitting headache, and it feels like there's like a steel wrap around your head and maybe something squeezing your chest, and you really feel stuck. I've given many techniques and instructions what to do in that moment, how to deal with it. So, how to deal with it so that you can, one, cut through that stubborn moment, that habit in the moment. So that's one. And second one, which means when you cut through it, you access this natural state. So you get like a fresh air. And even if it is for a split moment, it makes a big difference. It always makes a big difference, even if it is for a couple of seconds. But when we have the tools to make the natural state appear even for a couple of seconds, then we just keep repeating it. And when we keep repeating it, we have published 3 books, Awake book, and then What's Next on Post-Awakening Practice, and the third one is Buddhas Among Us, that has 6 accounts from our Sangha members who went through the whole, clarified the 10 bhumis and graduated emptiness practice, realized this wisdom, this prajna in full. So when we have the tools how to cut through the layers of the self-deluded, self-centered mind, in the beginning it's just like a brief moment that we cut through it. But as we keep doing purification practice, we do breathing practices, we chant and shout in the chakras, we do deity yoga, we do guru yoga, we do visualizations. Little by little, those fields, those grounds of self-delusion, those bhumis, they start clearing up gradually. And that means that when let's say that it's day 1 of your Amrita Mandala practice and you're doing dynamic concentration practice with little bodhicitta prayers, and you might do 200 or 300 sharp shouts. And this might lead to recognition of the natural state for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, something like this. I'm kind of perhaps playing it down, but something like that. Then 6 months down the line, I'm trying to think of some kind of average, some kind of example based on random statistics. But 6 months down the line, you might have 6 bhumis open, which is already very, very different from having 0 bhumis open. So 6 bhumis open, and then you purified the whole system to some degree. And at that point, when you do 200 or 300 sharp shouts, you might have a minute-long recognition of this clear, fresh, grounded, selfless, kind, soft, this ease. So maybe you have a minute at that point, and then again 6 months later you have again extended the period where you can easily recognize this basic state. So the key is just keep doing it. But not only that, do it for the right reasons. Do it with the right attitude. I've seen lots of, especially young men over the years, that they want to stabilize the natural state and they want to stabilize Rigpa, which is kind of one of those beasts, big monster words from Tibetan Buddhism. They want that, and then they do shouting practice, but then they went in from one ear and came out from the other ear the teaching of bodhicitta. So they don't somehow missed the importance of bodhicitta, and it doesn't work. If you don't have bodhicitta, if your heart is not in the right place, if your attitude is not right, if you're not, if you're doing it for selfish reasons, then those boomies will stay shut even if you shouted a million times. I have seen this over the years. I remember Helena, who is joining us, Acharya Helena, in 2018, she asked me that, okay, I have 6 boomies open and I do the practice, but nothing is happening, things are not moving forward. I immediately told her, it's bodhicitta problem you're having. And she fixed that, and things started opening very quickly again. So this bodhicitta is so important. It's the single most important teaching of the Mahayana. There is no Mahayana without bodhicitta. So it is bodhicitta that opens up, has the power to open up our, we have 3 bodies, physical, astral and causal, that directly relate to, it's not like Dharmakaya is causal body, Sambhogakaya astral body. It doesn't work directly like that, but there are, what do you call it? They are connected, let's put it that way. So when we properly exercise bodhicitta, it has the power to open all 3 kayas, 3 bodies, that then reveals this Buddha nature as Trikaya nature. Trikaya. Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. So bodhicitta is very, very important. And what does it mean? It means that we truly feel, we understand the mess, the samsaric mess we are in, and we consider the suffering of others. We feel the suffering of others. We understand that everybody wants to find peace and happiness and love, but they're not finding it. But we have been fortunate to sit here, to study the Dharma in some of us in many lineages with many teachers. So this is extremely fortunate, like it said, extremely, like you can think of your relatives and friends, all of them, and you can do the math. How many of them are practitioners? How many of them have such karmic connections to Dharma teachings in general? So it's not a big number in the West, is it? I don't have a single relative who do such things, who would have such karmic connections. So that exactly, that fact that that people are seeking for peace and love and happiness, but not finding it. This is the thing that touches the hearts of bodhisattvas. And we see the pain, we feel the pain. When we go to the grocery store or a cafe, wherever we might be, we see from people's faces, from their energy, from their bodies, oh, burdened by samsara, burdened by delusions, burdened by negative emotions, getting bombarded by negative emotions. We can see it from people. And if you think that, well, I don't need to be bothered about them, fuck them, they are not, it's not my problem. This is the opposite of bodhicitta. That kind of reaction, it's the opposite. That's a samsaric reaction. That's a very selfish, very self-deluded reaction. The way how bodhisattva feels is, oh, I see that pain. And what to do about it? Well, then you do your best to support your Dharma mission. Because we can't really go, there are maybe like a village festival or a city festival where you, of your own city, of your own village, and you see these people, they might be enjoying, having a good time, having a beer, drinking wine, partying, but even then you can see these people are miserable inside. They're lost inside. But the way how to support one's Dharma mission or to help those people, you can't really go in a village festival and let me tell you about Dharma. I see that you have a problem and I have a 2PF and this will solve your problem. It doesn't work like that. Why? Because people's merit varies. They might, if you did that, probably most of them would say, piss off, go away, what a weirdo, what a hippie, what a strange person, trying to teach me some new age, whatever, awakening stuff. So that's why we must support our mission. Like a mutual effort with our teachers, with acharyas, with our sangha friends, supporting our mission. And through the mission, because Dharma, sanghas of Dharma like ours included, we offer opportunities for people to learn and practice the Dharma and to realize the Dharma. But if we are not creating the opportunity, nobody will have the opportunity. So that's why there is like traditionally, it is the responsibility of the head of the lineage, in this case myself, to ensure that there are external resources, external like that there is a way to pass these teachings. And this means having centers, having like city centers, having countryside centers, residential centers, having local groups, having acharyas teaching in local groups, having like a teacher and instructor are different in the way that teacher is somebody who has like a Dharma transmission, like somebody who is very advanced both in practice and in teaching. Such a person becomes a teacher, like a lama. An instructor is like a lower level of that, kind of learning through teaching, beginning to teach and learning through teaching. But this so it's very, very important, this supporting the mission as a form of one's bodhisattva path. And especially if and when we have taken bodhisattva vows. These cannot be separated. Human realm is a very unique realm, because the mind of a human being, it goes from incredible, it's like a incredibly vast scale of mental and emotional states, from hells that even demons run away from, to lofty heavenly states, and then of course the transcended absolute Buddha nature. It's all in our minds. So this is why human beings who have necessary required merit and karmic connections have the rare opportunity to become Buddhas, Mahasiddhas, in a single lifetime. And that's why we should do our best to support the mission, so that there are these opportunities for all this ocean of people around us to practice, to even practice, to try one session. So I started speaking about I started speaking about the second and third turnings. So emptiness meditation is removing the causes of delusion. Removing the causes that make us feel existentially lost. And that's it. Emptiness teaching is not like the final teaching. Like, as you know, there is the third turning teachings after the second turning teachings. And this is what most Buddhists don't even know about. This is what most Buddhist teachers throughout history have not known or have not accepted. Why? Because the third turning teachings look like Hinduism. But that's not the main thing. We are not talking about, when we speak of true self that can be recognized and discovered post-emptiness. That's what you start cultivating after emptiness realization. It's not about Buddhism or Hinduism. This is what the Buddhists get stuck with. This is about about the reality of ourselves, about the true being of ourselves. So, what is revealed to us after emptiness, after we've gone through the whole Bhumi process, is, of course, then after that we are purifying the astral body, also known as the meridian system that is inside the physical body. And there might be lots of selfishness there and traumatization there. And the deeper the trauma, the more work it requires. Just lots of reverse suppression of emotions, lots of loving kindness, lots of giving love to oneself, wishing happiness to oneself, just slowly melting away of those very stubborn knots of traumatization. But selfishness, even if somebody doesn't have a psychological trauma, selfishness can also be very difficult to work with, because selfishness can be very subtle. So it makes it, non-apparent. Especially if it's cultural habits that gives this subtle selfishness, subtle pride, subtle arrogance. If it comes through culture, if we have been brought up in a very privileged cultures, then you have been brought up since you were a baby. That's why it's difficult to see. But nevertheless, it's the selfishness that we need to work through. We need to heal these traumas if we have them. And when we do that, do the hard work of healing, of getting behind our cultural habits, then what starts appearing is this Atman, this true self. Just like Dolpopa, Taranatha, this Jonang, Shentong lamas have said. So this true self, again, we don't need to, at this point, we don't need to worry of the self-delusion. Those boomies are, you've dealt with them, right? So you don't have self-delusion anymore. Your wisdom is 100% established. It is 24/7 established. But even if wisdom, vidya, like the opposite of avidya, ignorance, even if this vidya, this pragya is 100% established, that doesn't mean that you are fully, completely done. So there is still selfishness, this traumatization, which brings tons of negativity, buried emotions, and so on. So you need to work through them. But when there is a point in practice where, true self, this is a real thing. This is not, it's lovely. Spontaneously happy, at ease, joyful, playful, not running out of steam, not running out of energy. Trauma eats a lot of energy because it's you are absorbed in negativity, anxiety, anger, and so on. So it eats up lots of energy. But when you have less and less and less of that, then you have more vitality, more energy, automatically, spontaneously. Few of you have studied with Lama Dan Brown, and Lama Dan, I think he used the phrase like radiating of all positive qualities. Maybe you can correct me, Susan and Scott, if you remember the phrase that he used, but nevertheless he spoke of this radiance of all positive qualities. This is radiation of this true self, this Atman. Exactly how it's been taught in Hindu Dharma or Sanatana Dharma for thousands and thousands of years, which was then clarified by Dolpopa Sherab Gyaltsen roughly 1,000 years ago. And of course other Shentong lamas before and after him. And Buddha Shakyamuni himself. So, like I have said many times, I think that Buddha Shakyamuni came to revitalize Dharma, revitalize Sanatana Dharma, not to create his own religion, Buddha Dharma. But this confusion of the causal body still persists in Hindu Dharma. So in that sense, Buddha Shakyamuni's mission didn't do the trick. But from my perspective, it seems like the Shentong teachings, clarified by Dolpopa and others, still try to do that. And in a sense, I'm trying to do that also in Amrita Mandala. So emptiness isn't the end stop of realization, and this we can see in 5 basic kleshas. Just a moment, I will do a Google search. 5 kleshas Buddhism. So, 5 kleshas. The 5 kleshas or poisons in Buddhism are mental afflictions that cause suffering. Ignorance, avidya. That's the bhumi thing, that's the causal body thing. Then there is attachment, raga, aversion, dvesha, pride, mana, and jealousy, irshya. So, when we realize emptiness, we only remove the first one of this list, the klesha of ignorance, avidya. But then there are the other 4, attachment, aversion, pride, jealousy. You know, there are different translations of these 4 other kleshas. So this is just what Google AI gave me now. But what these 4 other kleshas means is our, again, habits of selfishness, negative habits caused by trauma. That's what it is. So, just endless negative emotions, negative associations happening in the mind, and then you're stuck with it. That's what it is. But then when we sit with it, face it, integrate those emotions, what is really interesting is that what I've learned in my own trauma healing of the past 4.5 years, since I finished my emptiness practice, is that, well, one thing is that there's so much suppressed in, I've had so much suppressed emotions because of my complex trauma. Just tons of negativity there stored. But one thing that has been interesting is that, you know, you have some traumatizing memories of some people, some incidents, and some periods in life that have been traumatizing. Something has happened, and you know, and then, for example, you have some sadness related to that experience, or have some anxiety related to that memory, or whatever emotion it might be. And then when it comes up, when you are doing emotional suppression in reverse, it comes up and you see that, oh, this was actually a totally healthy reaction in such circumstance. That this anger was exactly the right way to react to such and such shocking situation, but then you suppressed it. You didn't express it, you suppressed it. And same thing with every single other suppressed emotion you have. That these have all been perfect responses to these many situations, shocking situations. That was kind of a surprise to me. That it wasn't some erratic anger without a cause, without a reason. It was a perfect response. Do you understand? So that was like a discovery for me. And then what I've done in my own practice is sometimes you just gotta cry, Sometimes you gotta scream and shout, get that anger out, like really yell, really let it out, really express that suppressed emotion, what you should have done 40 years ago when it happened, 30 years ago when it happened. So some of that I've had to let out as like physically, crying, yelling, something like that. And other times it's been just internal work. Anger comes up, anxiety comes up, whatever comes up, and you just sit with it and integrate. And what I had to do many times is telling myself that, because your subconscious mind remembers those incidents, those situations. So then the subconscious mind is kind of like a animal, like a simple creature. It remembers everything, but it doesn't have a logic. Logic is a different part of the mind. A rational that enables rational thinking. That's the function of the mind in the head, right? But subconscious it's like down there in the body, below the solar plexus. So when the subconscious, you invite the subconscious to release those suppressed emotions, and then it kind of it's used to holding it down, but then it kind of lets go of some of those suppressed stuff, and then this conscious mind, you remember those incidents, you remember what happened, and then you can also see the emotional response that we had back then. So then you sit with it. Sometimes I've had to tell my subconscious tell myself that this was a perfectly valid reaction in that situation. But then I suppressed it because nobody ever told me to express emotions, like many of us are. We are not told that we should express all our emotions. So when that happens, you suppress this stuff. So then I've told myself that yes, this was perfectly valid, perfect way to respond to that situation, and now I can express it. Now it can come up, no problem. Kind of assuring my subconscious mind that this is perfectly fine. And now it's okay. Now it's safe to. You don't have to hold it anymore. So, and then gradually, when you work through suppressed emotions, you work through this trauma, you work through selfishness, the true self starts shining through. And this we have experience in Guru Yoga when we practice with any of the Mahasiddhas in the Mahasiddha family, any of the other Mahasiddhas who ever lived. So when those other four kleshas start loosening their grip, at the same time these all positive qualities start kind of seeping through. And that's the thing again, we don't need to generate positive qualities, they are just there. And having said that, in Amrita Mandala we have these affirmation practices, wishing happiness and love for oneself and others. So affirmations, may I be happy, may I be happy, may I be happy. But this is like a kind of like a preliminary. So we wish love and happiness for ourselves because it begins to melt that traumatization. It begins to heal it, which is necessary to do. So, but we shouldn't make the mistake of, we wish happiness for ourselves, and then we start to feel happy. Okay, I have generated this happiness, and now I really feel happy. But then we shouldn't make the mistake of getting attached to that state of mind. So, if you draw the conclusion that I just keep wishing myself happiness day and night, 24/7, and that's what spontaneous happiness means. No, it doesn't. This affirmation is just a way to melt away these rigid patterns of trauma and selfishness. But when it comes to spontaneous happiness, this true self, our true nature, already has it. So it doesn't need to be generated. But also, in reference to what I said about those suppressed emotions, and then realizing that, oh, this rage, this anger, this sadness, this whatever emotion has been a perfect response to in whatever moment, instance happening it has taken place, all of our emotions, all of them are perfect as such. Even anger, even anxiety, even depression. That's all the flowering of the natural state. There is this, I have to do a Google search. Just a moment. It's a Sahaja Yogini Chinta. There's this one quote that I've been coming back for several years now, by a Kashmir lady saint called Sahaja Yogini Chinta. The internet is slow. It's not usually this slow. Sorry, I can't find it now. It gives me all kinds of things, but not the exact quote. But yes, so it's an interesting mess that we have gotten into. And sometimes it's saying that it's interesting is far from the truth. When you're in the middle of it, it's not fun at all. It's fucking awful. But then we persist, we stick to it. If we have to. Not everybody has to. Nobody is imposing such demand on ourselves. It's only if we have to know, then we stick with it. For the benefit, for the liberation, for peace and happiness of all beings. So this is a brief commentary to the second and third turnings of the wheel of Dharma, of Buddha Shakyamuni and all Buddhas. Oh, maybe it's good to add to that true self. We have the I affirmation, the pure psyche affirmation. Also one of our practices. So so this phrase, radiation of all positive qualities, it's not only that there is love, there is kindness, there is understanding, there is, we are open and available for others. Where does that come from? The true self already tells it. The sense of I, me. That's what it means. Pure self, true I, pure I. That's where it comes from. So it is all 100% subjective. And it's kind of funny because I remember I wrote it in Awake book and What's Next, explaining the subject self and object selves, meaning that, first bhumi, that's the subject self, because you can address it with the I affirmation. Me, I. And it points directly behind the eyes, inside the head, because that's where the grossest self-delusion sits, this subject self. But then these object selves, the material that arises from bhumis 2 through 6, it's thoughts and emotions. But those thoughts and emotions have that sense of self in there, mixed in there. So, we have some thought, we have some reaction, and it momentarily, boom, this stuff comes from subconscious mind, and it momentarily assumes that throne of dictatorship behind the eyes. So these thoughts and emotions that come from the body, rises from the body, when there is identification with it, it creates a knot here, even after first bhumi opening. So when there's identification with it, it can it sits here behind the eyes. This is why I've said many times that when you have a dark night, look first to that place behind the eyes. First, bring awareness there. Because if you're trying to find it, sort it out from the body, not realizing that there's a hook here, then it won't work. So first check behind the eyes. And then when you bring awareness to it, it will disperse, it will release, and then you can effectively bring awareness to the rest of the body. If there are hooks elsewhere, this hooks created by sense of self. But always remember to check here. Okay, thank you, Michael. So Sahaja Yogini Chinta's quote. This is not the first time that Mike has posted this, because I refer back to the same quote many times. But Sahaja Yogini Chinta, this Kashmir lady saint, said, activities that are graceful, heroic, terrifying, compassionate, furious, arrogant, possessive, and envious, all without exception are perfect forms of pure self-illuminated wisdom. Furious, arrogant, possessive, envious. Extremely few authors have said it like this. Extremely few. But she's right. She's exactly right. I concur with, I agree with Sahaja Yogini Chinta. I remember, I think I first read that quote from, there's a French teacher called Daniel Odier, O-D-I-E-R, Odier, Daniel Odier. I remember reading it from his book. Okay, so second and third turnings. So second turning, emptiness realization, happens in the nadi system, which is inside the body and creates the aura, including the vertical pillar. That's the subtler of the two subtle bodies. And then there's the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the work happens in the astral body, in the meridians that are inside the physical body and in the shape of the physical body. And then, there are, we can define this sambodhi or light body attainment, this Buddhahood attainment, in two different ways. Sometimes it's defined as the purity of the two subtle bodies. Sometimes it's defined as the two subtle bodies plus physical body. So I think both are okay, both are valid definitions, but at least, definitely, it has to cover causal and astral bodies, these two subtle bodies. Yeah. So now we have established basic understanding, what we do in Amrita Mandala practice, what actually everybody in every Sangha, in every method is doing or trying to do. Everybody. No one is an exception in the world of Dharma. Because the thing is that if we think of full enlightenment, this sambodhi, full enlightenment, it is logical to think that if somebody is fully enlightened, meaning that that person has a fully enlightened mind, it would have to mean that that person's subtle bodies are 100% active and open. Right? But then we have to know what the full scope of this mind, which equals subtle body or subtle bodies, is. We need to know what the full scope of it is. And there are yoga systems that speak of 7 chakras in the spine. There are yoga systems that speak of 3 channels, left and right channels, and then the one in the middle, central channel. So this is very common. 7 chakras, 3 nadis, 3 channels. Sometimes it's 5 chakras and 3 channels. Sometimes it's 3 chakras and 3 channels. And there is no other issue there except that it's very indirect. If you only chant mantras, if you only do purification in 7 chakras or 5 or 3, and these 3 channels, the fact is that you are only working with the spine, you are only working with these 3 channels. But tantric texts, yoga texts, since thousands of years ago, have said that there are tens of thousands of channels. Tens of thousands. Sometimes the texts say that it's hundreds of thousands. So it is, if we want to really get this work done in a single lifetime, I think it is necessary to know the full scope of the subtle bodies. We simply need to know about the aura. We need to know about the vertical pillar. We need to know about how causal and astral bodies are different. Because that is an interesting thing. There are Buddhist methods that, Buddhism kind of, the emphasis of Buddha Dharma is the realization of emptiness. And like I said previously, that's what Buddha Shakyamuni, I think, came to revitalize, that point. He came to revitalize this pragya, pragyana, jnana yoga as his main thing, because Hindus had lost it, lost that understanding. But even nowadays, if you go to Buddhist groups, Buddhist traditions, they don't know the difference between the two subtle bodies. So they might be practicing embodied sitting, embodied practices, and then they think that they are doing emptiness practice. But embodied practice is embodied, so it doesn't really, let's put it this way, it doesn't work that well for insight, emptiness insight. Same thing, the reason why I've split subject self and object selves is because those are clearly two different things. And I've been told by so many people over the years who have learned Vipassana meditation in different Buddhist traditions that they had only been taught object self Vipassana. They had only been taught to observe the stuff in the body, but never once they had been instructed to bring the attention here. So many people have told me this. So yeah, we really need to know and be certain that we are not taking anything on faith when it comes to practice. It's not a matter of disrespect if we ask questions. It is not we shouldn't be afraid to what was I gonna say? Yeah, if methods are stating that this method is this method takes you to somebody in a single lifetime, then necessarily there needs to be lots of detailed information, lots of technical information. Necessarily. Why? Because our subtle bodies, our human condition, psychological condition, mental, emotional condition requires it. And if we don't understand, then it's enlightenment in maybe 100 lifetimes rather than one. But then if we know the full scope of subtle bodies, if we know the ins and outs, we know the mechanism, we have all this knowledge, then it can be very swift. Our practice can be very effective. And we have testimonies of that in our Sangha, written in our books, There's been lots of people who I've done guidance to awakening with, and many of them have practiced decades of different types of meditation, always wanting to get awakened, but then the practice didn't deliver it. And then suddenly, can be literally in a day, in 2 days, when they are given the 2PF, suddenly that awakening happens. So results can come very fast, and there are, I can't think of any name of any book, any scripture, but there are training manuals in Vajrayana that speak of that it's possible to attain some bodhi in like 5 or 7 years. Yes, it is possible if the know-how and the instructions are correct. But then it can be 50 or 70 lifetimes if they are incorrect, or if something is missing. So that's how it is. I wasn't really planning to give like a talk of 1.5 hours, so my apologies for taking your retreat time. But also maybe good to remind everybody about the basic view, pragmatic view of things.